Hi everyone, welcome to our Future Proof 2.0 webinar. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Patrick Connolly. I'm a Senior Consulting Accountant here at Quantum, as is Brett Rudman here with me today. So for those of you who don't know much about Quantum Advisory, we're a boutique accounting and advisory firm. We've got about 20 staff, offices in Windsor, Wollongong and Sydney Olympic Park. And our mission is to help businesses gain control, grow profits and reduce tax. So what we're doing here today, we ran this webinar, I think it was November last year or December, Brent? December, sorry. And we had quite a few people attend, but then through word of mouth, we've had a lot of people who weren't able to make it ask for us to do it again. So we thought we'd come back and do this webinar again. And it's all about transitioning business ownership strategically and stress-free.
Thanks, Pat. So what we've seen over time is that succession is really about getting your business in the best shape so you can maximize its value and achieve the best return on investment. And it's an ongoing process, and I really want to emphasize ongoing, that will require regular time and strategy. And it's also about preparing for what-if scenarios and ensuring your business can function smoothly in your absence.
So what is succession planning? It is what will happen to your business when you ultimately decide that you want out. There are many options to consider, but initially you must decide what it is that you want from your business and the lifestyle you plan to leave when you exit or retire. Questions like, when do you want out? How much money will you need to enjoy your desired lifestyle? Have you considered who might like to take over? Are they ready? Will they require grooming to assume a leadership role? Do they actually want to take over? So the answers to these questions will help determine your succession timeline and allow you to work backwards to determine and complete the actions required to achieve your ideal outcome.
Yeah, and the longer you have to prepare, the more likely you are to achieve those goals and be in a good shape when the event actually happens.
Absolutely. So we put a few stats together. First, in regards to family businesses. So 25% of family businesses plan to sell or float. 38% will transfer management to the next generation. 36% will transfer ownership, but not management. 30% of family businesses succeed into the second generation, so it's only 30%. 70% of family successors work outside the business first. And then, alarmingly, or surprisingly, 75% of private businesses are still owned by the business founder. So 60% of family business owners expect their business will be retained in the family at the conclusion of their succession process, but we can see here only 30% of family businesses succeed into a second generation, and most businesses overwhelmingly are still owned by the person who founded them. So that says a lot about the importance of succession planning, and really demonstrates that what people think is going to happen, at least half the time according to this, doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it shows what a big issue it is for family businesses of this process of transferring and the business through to the next generation or the potential purchaser, whatever it might be. And so it comes down to having to think about what would happen to your business if a sudden event left you incapable of running it. Now, could your team operate without you? Would your clients or customers be affected? Would the value of your business be affected? And how would your business survive? These are some of the things we need to think through as we are considering the succession planning process.
So what we've got here, before we go through some of the myths, these are things that get thrown up at us commonly when we talk to clients about succession planning. I want to go through a couple of these myths. So first, that a year is plenty of time. How much do you think you need to plan for your exit? Because a year is not going to do it. We recommend that, in our experience, for a well-prepared business owner with a strategic plan and a business which is in good shape, you'll need at least 2 years for this process. You'll need 3 or 4 years for a family business owner looking to pass on to professional management. And you'll need 5+ years for a family business owner looking to pass on to the next generation to get that process right. Next myth, everyone in the family has mutual expectations. Here's the big one. Families very rarely have the same expectations. Often a parent will assume that a child wants to take over, or the child assumes theirs for taking when they're not ready. Everyone's got to be on the same page or relationships can be affected. And this goes back to why it can take a very long time to get this right for family businesses. The final myth we've got up here, I'll just be able to maintain my current lifestyle. That's obviously the goal of this process, but have you actually looked at how much money you'll need to sustain your lifestyle in the future? Taking into account inflation, rising health costs, you have to know what that looks like and then plan to ensure you get enough value from the sale of your business to provide for your lifestyle in the future. It isn't just going to happen.
Yeah, that's good. So basically, the more time you have for planning and implementation, the better to achieve a increased value that is sustainable. So you might say, why is a year not enough time? You can sell a house in just a few months. Why not a business? But what we've found is you need time to get the business in order so you can extract the maximum value. So you might have personal assets tied up in the business, or there might be some other things that take time to untangle from the business so it's clear what you are selling. So you might decide you're ready, but the current market may be weak, or you struggle to find a suitable buyer. So it can take time to attract the right successor. And more importantly, if you take some time to capitalize on the opportunities in your business, you could achieve a better payoff. So it's all about packaging your business as neatly as possible. And another consideration is how many of your business's processes are documented, or is this in your head? So you need time to document and transfer this knowledge to ensure that it's a smooth transition. And sometimes it can be a bit of an emotional time. See, it sometimes involves honest conversations with stakeholders in relation to your goals and your expectations, as well as considering how these will work with other stakeholders. And this can be particularly hard in family businesses where expectations may not be aligned.
Yeah, so we find some of the most confrontational discussions often revolve around choosing who in the family is the right successor, or maybe not family, ensuring a fair division of assets amongst heirs, sometimes firing family members who are not capable, and also structuring the plan to give children some benefit, but not so much that they lack the incentive to develop their own life goals.
Yeah, so some tough conversations there.
So what are your standard options looking at succession planning? Whatever your plan looks like, it's going to generally be aligned with one of these broad ideas. So generational succession to your children or the family members. 2, selling business on the open market with a transitional period. 3, selling business on the open market but remaining as a consultant. 4, finding a current manager or employee to sell to. 5, actually recruiting a new manager or employee with the vision to eventually sell to them. Or 6, in some instances, ceasing to trade and liquidating the business's assets.
Yeah, that's good. So each of those options, they have different planning requirements and different timelines. So it's important to identify your ideal option early on in the process and plan. So it's important to consider your target successor and who will be the best fit for your business. Because identifying your potential buyers now will allow you to focus your efforts during the planning process, whether you need to start training a family or team member to take over, or start networking with the right people.
So this could be a family member, a competitor, a supplier, a business in a similar market, an employee, or even just a first timer into business. So family businesses, looking at the option of passing a business to the next generation, might seem like the best and easiest option, but it does raise its own set of potential issues to be aware of. First, is it really the best option for the business? Have you actually given serious consideration to the other options, or is it just the most obvious that occurred to you? 2, is there someone in the family who actually wants to take over the business? Is the person capable? Is it the right person? And what happens if more than one person wants to take over? Have you had an open family conversation with everyone discussing the future of the business? Has everyone had an opportunity to voice their opinions and feelings?
Yeah, so it's really great to be in a position to give your loved ones a business opportunity. But if you disregarded the family connection, would you identify that proposed successor as being a capable leader? What are their weaknesses and how could these be managed throughout the process so that they become capable? Maybe they'll require some formal training or work experience outside of the business before they're ready. Will passing it down to the next generation affect the value achieved? And how much can your successor afford to put into the business? Will you need to leave some equity in the business? Are you ready to relinquish control? Do you trust your child to make leadership decisions? because there can only be one leader and you don't want to strain the relationship. So family succession doesn't mean that you can take shortcuts. In fact, as you see before with the difficult conversation we have, following the correct process is even more important. Use independent advisors to ensure the plan is fair to everyone and all involved are accountable throughout the process. And something that we've seen really valuable is having a shareholder agreement covering what-if scenarios that can help protect the business. And one of the most important components of that shareholder agreement is dispute resolution. So deciding before anything happens, how a dispute will be resolved. And then also just having clearly defined roles in your organisation chart will be really important as you transition.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that while succession planning is obviously a lot about you, you have to consider the business as a whole. So will the successor continue to support your team in the way that you have? How can you minimize the risk to the team throughout the process? And it's a big one, are all your employee benefits documented in employment agreements to make sure they carry forward? So now is the time to put these processes in place to protect your employees. After all, they're an important part of the business and will help ensure a smooth transition for your successor. Also consider your customers and how their needs must be managed throughout the transition. This can have a major impact on the price you achieve.
That's good. So we've got, I suppose, we're thinking a lot about, what the process looks like. And I guess there's just a couple of tips that have come up with while working through this process. So if you haven't yet documented your core values of your business, obviously now is the second best time to do this. A year ago would have been the best time. Having strong leadership, it's all about making goals and expectations clear to the team and then allowing them to come up with the best way to achieve those goals. So really preparing them for that future role that they'll play. And leadership skills can be learned. So make sure you provide appropriate training and mentoring. And make sure the plans are visible and it's providing a brightness of future for your team. So they need to know where you're planning to go so they can set their own goals that are consistent with the direction that you're taking. And then also back up people to prevent important knowledge from walking out the door. So you've got redundancies in those key roles. It's important. It's also about managing tasks effectively and without undue reliance on certain people, because this will also diminish the value of your business.
Look, that kind of wraps up a bit of an intro into what is succession planning and a lot of the concepts. So we're going to move into now the succession process, what that looks like. But before we do that, we're going to launch a poll just to get a bit of a feel for where our audience is up to with their succession plan. So we'll make that available now and we'll give you a few seconds to have a look at that and answer. You can see some answers come in, but we'll give people a little bit longer. Okay. Yep. Most people have voted now. So only a couple of us have a formally documented plan in place.
We'll share the results, everyone, so they can see that.
Sorry, didn't make you do that. It's even better. Yeah, so a couple of us have formally documented plans. Some of us have a clear idea of what will happen, but most of us don't have any clear plan in place, which is probably later on in the webinar, which is good.
So it really shows what a big issue it is at the moment.
Yeah, that gives us some context to move forward. So while your plan is going to vary depending on your time frame, the industry you're in, who's taking over, there is still a basic process to ensure you manage applicable risks and achieve a good outcome. It's important to identify what steps or projects will be particularly relevant for your succession journey and plan for when these will be completed prior to your exit.
So the process, and you'll have to bear with us here because there's a fair bit involved in it. And a lot of it's just because it's so different for different business, but this is a bit of a rough outline. So stage one just really gets you thinking about the business, where it is now, and where you want it to be when you exit. And so this all feeds into an initial 12-month succession plan. So the first step is to define your goals. So both personal and business. You need to identify what you want to get out of the business now and for the life that you want to lead after. And two is make sure you establish and revisit the vision for the business and plan for how you get the team on board to realising this. Three is it's important to meet with your essential advisors and get independent advice on a range of issues.
So I'll tell you, Brent, I had an example of this recently. We had a client come to us a new client come to us at Quantum. They'd just gone through a sale process. The process is done, the contract signed, consideration has been paid. It was a $12 million plus earn out other arrangement acquisition, big business. Come to us after the sale, the deal was done, so it was too late to really change much other than a few things around the edges. We did, though, do a review of the structure of the deal and how it was put together. We could have saved them $1.1 million in tax had we had the opportunity to look at it earlier. So it just really goes to show how important it is to get the advice at this stage.
Yeah, that's right. No such thing, or as I say, nothing is expensive as cheap advice.
I might also just make the point, I'm not sure if I said it earlier, Brent, but we will have a Q&A session at the end. So I can see a number of questions are coming in, which is good. So keep putting those questions in there as we go, and we'll make sure we answer those at the end.
So number 4 was we had identifying factors that may influence a plan, because there may be a range of factors outside of your control that could influence your plan. Things like changing market trends and that sort of thing. Number 5 was we had to establish, we need to establish the most logical succession options for your business. Thinking about those potential purchasers and who they might be, and how you can cater for those scenarios. Number 6 was just about identifying potential successors or a likely profile for your successor. Number 7 is just, it's really about considering your ideal timeline and when you must achieve, what age do you want to retire by, and working back from that time frame to establish when you want to achieve those key goals by. And then 8 is, it's time to start creating a succession plan. And so we've got an effective succession plan template that ensures you capture your goals and your actions to achieve these. It's important, that your plan is documented and accessible so you can refer to it and update as required throughout the process. But more importantly, just to see how you're tracking against your original timeline.
Yeah, so takes us to stage 2 of the succession process. So getting your organizational structure right is crucial. Clearly defining the roles and responsibilities in your organization will improve efficiency, team engagement, and make your business more attractive on paper. This is things like looking at how many hats are you currently wearing in the business and how much time do you have to work on the business, not just in it. Yeah,
so that point is really about how reliant is the business owner on you. Yeah. So the business on the business owner, because those sorts of things are going to build value in your business.
Yeah, and I should say from here on at this stage too, not all the steps are going to be relevant to every business, but it does form a general guide of what actions should be undertaken. It's obviously going to be important to establish a process specific to your business, and that's obviously something we can help you with. But step 2 here is completing internal due diligence. So you'll be able to identify and mitigate risks before your potential buyer does their own due diligence. So, working out what things that your potential buyer could find in your business and trying to address those before they have a chance to get there. It's also important to reality test your business's current value by using an independent valuer, and that'll help you highlight the gap between what you need to get out of the business and what it's worth now, so you can work out how to build the value.
And that's actually another thing that we've got a really good tool for is just a quick calculation of what your current business value is and what it needs to be, and start to really put together an action plan for key steps you can take to increase that value, because increasing value is partly profitability is part of the equation, but just as important is increasing the speed of cash flow coming through your business, because if you're able to operate a profitable business on less working capital, that shows you've got a really efficient business, which will increase the value.
Okay, and then moving on to step 5 there, financial forecasting and profit projection. So it's all about working on your KPIs to keep you on track to achieve your financial goals. This allows you to paint a picture for your successor of the value they'll be gaining in the future. Step 6 there, restructuring. So after reviewing your organizational structure, you might identify areas of your business which need to be restructured. Now's the best time to undertake these changes so that everything's tidy prior to a sale. You'll also need to have a good look at the balance sheet and consider what assets you're going to include in the sale. Are there any liabilities you can reduce prior to the sale? Have you given any personal guarantees for business loans? Really important that you identify that and see do anything about those.
That's a key part of the asset protection.
Your insurance policies to make sure these reflect the changes you're working towards. And it might not be that you're changing anything yet, but just identifying what needs to be changed. Tax planning, like we said, very important at this stage to avoid those outcomes where you come to us and we tell you what we could have saved you later. We really recommend you've got to seek professional advice at this stage of the process. Also, so you know what the tax implications of the sale will be, because that also feeds into that number of what you need to get out of the business. And then packaging up your business. So what we're saying here is there might be other opportunities to enhance the perception of the value of your business. And it's a good time to work through that.
Yep. Right, nearly there. So 12 is if you're not transferring ownership to a family member or employee, the next stage is to take your business to market. Then we can help you consider the most suitable options for your business. And if appropriate, we may even be able to filter inquiries and help with queries, because it's important to have an impartial party and filter out any unsuitable buyers and act as a neutral buffer between you and your successor to reduce stress and achieve a better outcome for all. And so when you've received an offer that you're happy with, your lawyer will then need to draw up an agreement for the sale and purchase of the business for both parties to sign. Then make sure you've read the agreement carefully, bring any issues to the attention of a lawyer, an accountant prior to signing, and then obviously you finish up with your post-settlement and transitional requirements. Make sure they're agreed by both parties prior to settlement so that everyone knows what to expect during the transitional phase.
So that's the stages of the actual succession planning process. Now we want to delve a bit further into what we can do to increase the value and saleability of the business. So point 1 there, we've got your structure and business plan. Getting your structure right, like we said, and having a plan in place, the business plan we're talking about, promotes growth and profitability within your business. So we look at, is your business structured for maximum efficiency? Will it remain sustainable once you've exited? Is your organizational chart current, first of all? And does it clearly document the 10 departments and key responsibilities for each role, or however many you have?
And also, do you regularly refer to and visit your business plan?
Yeah, well, that's very important. And that'll come through in whether the state of the business reflects the plan when the buyer looks at it. Housekeeping, so what do we mean by that? We mean, are your processes also documented and accessible? Is there any maintenance or refurbishing to be undertaken prior to putting the business in the market? Is the branding engaging? Do your technology and systems need attention? Are all employment agreements and job descriptions, current and also signed off, they get executed? So just making sure that all these things are in order increases the saleability and attractiveness to a buyer. Looking at risk management. So are you aware of the risks your business is exposed to? Recognizing and minimizing these risks will help to maximize the value of your business. These risks could relate to health and safety, debtor control, liquidity, terms of trade, whatever it is. It's a good idea to undertake a risk management review during the succession process, leaving enough time to implement and reap the benefits of certain changes.
Yeah, what we've seen is quite often as part of this process that a risk register is created and maintained, and risks are categorised by the likelihood of them recurring, then also the seriousness of that risk eventuating. And so then you can really start to prioritise risks by what needs urgent action now. And keeping and maintaining that risk register gives you a line of sight on where you're up to as far as mitigating them, and as part of this overall improving the value process. Because failing to do so, may backfire when a potential buyer does their own due diligence, affecting the sale price or even potentially derailing a deal. So once again, it's important to bring in outside help, to minimise risk prior to the sale.
So then value enhancement. So you've got to make any meaningful changes to business that result in sustainable increased value. Remember to start, like I said, with the end in sight, determine what you want out of the business, and then we work out how much you need to increase the value to achieve that.
It's good. So to recap the succession planning process, I've got a bit of a slide which we can share with you. But I suppose there's really a couple of important considerations. You set your business up to provide for your future, so it's vital that you establish your expectations now in order to achieve your desired lifestyle upon exit. So how much value do you need to extract from the sale of your business to ensure you can meet your retirement lifestyle? Things like using an independent third party to facilitate succession planning will help to reality test your options and minimise stress along the way. And then your timeline will also help determine what position your bids will be in at the point of sale. As I said earlier, the longer you have to plan, the more value you should be able to extract. Because in succession planning, there's no one size fits all. It's a very personal process.
Yeah. So your succession plan leaves gives you a chance to plan where you want to go, understand how many to get there, really identify your expectations, and then hopefully the idea of this is that you can then relax knowing that your dreams are achievable and you've got a plan you can follow to make that happen. The result of which is, as you can see, you get to sit in a lawn chair with cucumbers on your eyes, you're less stressed, you've achieved a higher business value, everyone's happy, and we're all working on the same page. So succession planning now will help you secure your future. It's really about being proactive rather than reactive to what can come.
That's good, Pat. So no doubt there's been a few questions come along the way. If there's any more, type them in the Q&A into the chat box there, and we'll endeavour to get to them as we go.
Yeah, so I've got a few already. So I've got a question from Simon. I'm one of two, and this makes it more complex. Any ideas?
Yeah, look, so when it comes to multiple parties, first of all, it comes down to, putting together a bit of a plan. As I've been saying, it's about planning, identifying the most likely successes, making it clear to everyone, documenting it, and
yeah, I think I would say when it comes to a business with a couple of partners, it's even more important to get in right ahead of time, really potentially very long-term planning, because like we said, some of these confrontational conversations that you can have around who's the best person to take over, when is that going to happen? Some of these things you might find that both partners have fairly firm ideas that neither has ever discussed with the other. And so I think it's important that you have that discussion as early as possible. It might be that your visions are not compatible, and that's okay. That just means one of you might be end up buying out the other. But at least everyone has an idea of what the future might look like and can make their own plans accordingly.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Another question came through from Daniel. How does vendor financing work?
Yeah, vendor finance is a great one, and it is really common in the succession planning process. And essentially, and this is probably most common when it's transferring to the next generation. And it's where the business owner selling out is able to assist the purchaser buying into the business with finance for the sale. So rather than the purchaser having to put up all the money up front, can be a combination of a loan from the vendor to the purchaser for the purchase of the business. So and quite often they can take security over the loan that they've given to the next purchaser, whether that's charge over some shares in the business without actually having any ownership, something like that to guarantee the loan being repaid and reduce risk. What would you say?
Yeah, that's right. It really depends. It can happen in two situations, like you said, a family business situation where it's it's just being funded by a family member and recorded properly, but it's all very much in the family. If it's an arm's length sale Often that means it's, like I said, a loan agreement that's documented. There's normally, if it's not, like generally going to have some form of upfront payment as well. And wherever possible, we recommend taking security over real assets.
Yeah.
So we just had a couple of follow-up questions. Sorry, it's the same follow-up question from an anonymous attendee. I'm in a similar position. This is in regards to the being one of two. I'm in a similar position. It's hard to even get a decision made, let alone have this discussion. What are the practical options to exit separately? So I'll just jump in there. I think that the real answer to this question, obviously, is you have to get advice on what your business structure looks like. Whether you're operating as a partnership, a company, or a trust will really change the answer here. As to whether you've got any legal options available to you to force separation or dissolution of the partnership. If you're in a trust or a company, it's going to be a bit different. Whether or not you had a shareholders agreement at the start of this process make a big difference. So it is a bit hard to answer that. The answer, I guess, is there could be some legal options. There generally always is some legal options to force an exit when you're ready, if you can't get a decision made. But you want to get advice, and you want to get advice before you're at the point that you absolutely want out, because it might not be an immediate outcome.
Yeah, and that's a fair way down the track. Even before we get to that stage, and it sort of links with another question that we received about the management of the business after your exit, and having a bit of a discussion around how the business is managed and who makes decisions and how decisions are made, and it really enters into how the business is governed or the governance of the business. So, is there regular discussions such as board meetings where these sorts of issues are raised and worked on, and do the successors have someone to get advice from? So a mentor or something like that, or an advisory board where these kind of things can, that you can get advice from, advice that's, where there's no sort of emotional attachment, that sort of thing, which helps with these decisions being made.
Yeah. So that kind of answers the other question we have here, which is how to implement a proper management structure. So yeah, it really goes back to that, having separate, really clear roles and responsibilities and a bit of a governance structure. So I think we've probably answered that. So I think that's all the questions. We've got a question early on the webinar when we just start to document the document processes. I think the answer to that is quite simple. You want to document your processes now, as soon as possible. This goes beyond just succession planning. Obviously, the business is more valuable with documented processes, but it's also just planning for risk and what can happen to key people, and just making the business much more sustainable and resilient.
Yeah. Just got another one coming here from Samuel, just about building value in the business. We discussed, maximising the value on sale. What's the best area to start with that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a hard question to answer because it does obviously depend what industry you're in, and what kind of services you're offering. But a few things that sort of transcend industry would be how reliant the business is on the owner. So whether the buyer can be an investor who doesn't have the time to commit full time to the business, that can make a difference to the value. That goes to what we were just saying, having processes documented, and having systems that run independently.
And also not just the owner, but key people as well. So having reliance on key people is obviously going to reduce value and increase risk for a potential purchaser.
A couple other things, I guess, if you've got recurring revenue, that will make a difference. If either you've got a client base that is on a subscription model, or if you've got forward contracts, or any other long-term revenue locked in, that creates immediate value, that's obviously going to increase the value of your business as well.
Yeah, and things like if there's seasonality in your revenue, those sort of things can detract from value. So having a business machine that's constantly generating revenue, those sorts of things will add value.
Yeah, and I guess to that point as well, consistency in results. So the more consistent your profitability, your revenue, and other key figures are in your financial statements over a number of periods, will obviously give more confidence to an investor or buyer, and therefore increase the value.
That's good. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up all the questions.
Just a little bit over time, but I've gone all right, I think. Yeah.
Right. So as we close this session now, there will be a recording sent round after this, as well as some notes, and there'll also be a quick question at the end. We're certainly glad of any feedback that anyone could offer from the session, as well as any ideas that you might have for future sessions. We'd be very glad to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.